Hello everyone and welcome to my The Bold Fans channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. According to previews on Friday, August 21st, The Bold and the Beautiful BNB, Thorsten Kaye's character Ridge Forrester will learn something unexpected. Here's what fans of BNB should anticipate. Will Spencer, Crew Morrow, and Melissa Dillon, Sydney Bullock, will also have a misguided excursion to Bikini Bar. First, after Ridge's vacation to Monaco, Daphne Rose Walton, Muriel Hilaire, will catch up with him. Ridge can notice that Daphne is thinking a lot and question whether everything is all right. Daphne may acknowledge that she left Carter Walton, Lawrence St. Victor, and almost traveled to Paris before realizing her mistake. Ridge might be shocked to hear that Carter and Daphne's marriage was on the verge of dissolution, but he will find it encouraging that she decided to stay. Daphne will undoubtedly rave about how amazing Carter is for winning her back. Ridge may concur that Carter is a trustworthy man and the ideal spouse for Daphne, but neither of them will be aware that he had an affair with Steffi Forrester Finnegan, Jacqueline McInnes Wood. Carter's only option is to hope Steffi doesn't say anything in spite of her guilt. A part of Steffi still thinks that she should tell John Finn Finnegan, Tanner Novlin, the truth, but Carter made it apparent that Finn would never find out. There will be a lot riding on Carter and Steffi's ability to keep quiet now that they are both trying to get their marriages back on track. Will and Dylan will interact awkwardly with R.J. Forrester, Brian Nicoletti, and Electra Forrester, Lania Grace, at Bikini Bar. If the new youth collection themed around Electra is officially approved, Electra and R.J. might be present to celebrate. In any event, there will be a lot of tension since R.J. and Electra will run into Will and Dylan. There will undoubtedly be some insults spoken, even if Will and R.J. are able to refrain from striking each other. According to teasers for The Bold and the Beautiful, Electra and Dylan will also have some difficult moments. Keep an eye out to see how bad their expedition turns out. The Forrester Creations Executive Suite's tall windows let in afternoon sunlight, which created long golden bars on the sleek leather furniture and polished wood floors. With his arms crossed and his jaw set in that recognizable harsh line, Ridge Forrester stood at the glass wall overlooking the vast city, his thoughts already 3 steps ahead of any impending storm. It had been an unrelenting week. Finn's Monaco secrets remained like a stone in his stomach. He had not forgotten Steffi's silent suffering. Additionally, the business was now burdened by an excessive number of internal conflicts that could potentially leak into the public domain. He was startled out of his reverie by a gentle knock. When the door opened and Daphne Rose entered, he turned. She appeared smaller than usual, with something heavy softening the piercing confidence that normally distinguished her. Even before she spoke, Ridge could tell everything he needed to know by the way she twisted her wedding rings. "Ridge, do you have a moment?" He pointed to the chairs by the low table. "Always." "Sit," she said, sitting on the edge as though prepared to run. She just looked at her hands for a long time. Ridge held out. Silence frequently elicited more truth than inquiries, as he had long since discovered. Finally, in a steady but faint voice, she continued, "Carter and I almost ended it. I returned the rings to him. I informed him that I was unable to stay." Ridge's demeanor remained unchanged, but a chilly feeling took hold behind his eyes. "That I couldn't give him the family he wants." Daphne nodded and said, "Because of the diagnosis." The physicians were unambiguous. "There is really little chance. I can't subject him to it. I can't bear to watch him act as like it doesn't matter when I know it does. I was therefore going to depart." She took a trembling breath and said, "Pack a bag, go back east, start over somewhere no one expects anything from me." He wouldn't let me leave. He himself replaced the rings on my finger. He declared that having children or not, the only future he desires is one in which I am a part of it. We came to a consensus. Ridge sat forward and rested his elbows on his knees, saying, "Or at least, we said we did. But you're still carrying it." "Every hour," she said. "I see the life he is choosing not to have because of me when I look at him. And I can't stop wondering if he will wake up one day and be angry with me for it. the words hovered between them, or if I'll wake up and realize I trapped him in something smaller than what he deserved. Ridge examined her closely. He was the one who knew Carter the best. He was aware of the man's steadfast devotion to whatever he loved. He was also aware of how quickly that same passion may become silent destruction. Ridge remarked, "Carter doesn't do half measures. He is serious when he says that this is sufficient. However, I can see why the skepticism persists." Daphne's gaze briefly met his, saying, "You've both been through hell in a very short time. There's more. I sense it. This week something changed in him. He treats me with caution. Too cautious. As if he was defending something. Or shielding me from something." Ridge's heart pounded once. His expression remained neutral. "Why do you say that?" "Minor details. When he believes I'm not looking, he looks at his phone. The way he shifts the topic when Steffi's name is mentioned. Since she returned from Monaco, he has changed. I keep telling myself that since I'm already raw, I'm only dreaming. However, the emotion won't go away." Ridge reclined. With terrible clarity, the parts clicked into place. Steffi and Carter. They both thought their marriages were over that night. The careless, desperate solace they had found in one another. The subsequent vow of silence they had made. And now Daphne, already teetering on the brink of departure, felt the crack but was unsure of its actual form. Not all shocking news came with pyrotechnics. Sometimes it came as a silent admission from a lady who didn't realize she was giving him the other half of a secret that could blow up two families. He was quite careful about what he would say next. Individuals bear personal burdens. Carter has more than most people. If it's genuine, whatever is bothering him will surface when he's ready. Or when necessary. Daphne examined his face and said, "For now, the fact that he battled to keep you here tells me where his heart is. If you knew something that could harm us, wouldn't you tell me?" Ridge looked her in the eye without recoiling. "I would never allow either of you to enter a situation that I could stop. The most crucial thing at this point is that you two continue to communicate. Continue selecting one another each day." She nodded slowly, letting go of some of the strain in her shoulders. The rest we handle if it becomes necessary. I am grateful." Ridge sat there staring at the vacant chair for a long time after she went. "I needed to say it out loud to someone who isn't already inside the storm with us." The information weighed heavily on his chest. Steffi and Carter. One night of mutual breakdown. And Daphne, who was so on the verge of leaving that another fracture may make her flee permanently. He would observe. He would defend what was yet defendable. However, the truth had a way of discovering the light. And once it did, the consequences would be uncontrollable. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the low beat of music from the outdoor speakers filled the late afternoon gathering at Bikini around the city. The smell of sunscreen and salt filled the ocean breeze. Dylan stood so close to Will Spencer that their shoulders almost brushed as he leaned against the bar and watched the waves with a half-finished glass in his hand. For once, their talk had been light-hearted, almost humorous. The tightness in Will's chest had loosened for the first time in days. That ease ruined RJ's moment. Electra and Forrester entered the patio. In the same moment, all four of them froze. With a sharpness that could cut glass, Electra's dark eyes latched on Will before sliding to Dylan. RJ's expression hardened, taking the place of his customary laid-back charm. Will sensed Dylan moving next to him, her body straightening as though preparing for a blow. With a deceptively light voice, Electra answered, "Well." Will carefully put down his drink and said, "Isn't this cozy?" "Electra." RJ nodded briefly. "Spencer." "Dylan," Dylan said with a courteous but fragile smile. "We were simply taking a break after work." "So were we," Electra said. As though she still had complete control over Will's reality, she approached the bar and asserted her dominance. The silence that ensued was thick enough to taste. Funny how the same places keep drawing the same people. Every recent disagreement, allegation, and bruised emotion that hung between them could be felt by Will. He and RJ had already exchanged blows with Elektra. Just a few days prior, Dylan and Elektra had verbally attacked Forrester. Between the four of them, the air felt flammable. RJ. Without taking his eyes from Will, he placed an order for 2 drinks. Will said evenly, "I didn't expect to see you two here together." Elektra laughed softly and without amusement, saying, "We're allowed to be in the same place." "You are, of course. The nation is free. Individuals move on." Dylan raised his chin and said, "Or pretend to. Nobody is acting fake." "Talking," Elektra repeated, tasting the word. "We're just talking. Isn't that how it begins?" "Speaking." Will winced. Then all of a sudden, someone is kissing someone else's boyfriend while the relationship is still alive. Elektra. "No," she interrupted. "I'm done acting like the last week never happened. Because everything around us continued blowing up, you and I fell apart. And she was there as soon as the dust settled. Convenient timing." Dylan's voice remained steady despite her hot cheeks. "None of this was planned by me. I had no intention of harming anyone. What transpired between Will and myself just happened." RJ put down his drink more forcefully than was required. "When people are still bleeding from the last fight, things don't just happen." Will became enraged. "Comfort and opportunism are 2 different things. Be careful, Forrester." RJ moved in closer. "Or what? You've already punched Bikini once. Are you prepared for the second round?" The music appeared to stop. Conversations in the vicinity stopped as individuals became aware of the tension. Elektra put a hand on RJ's arm to seize the moment rather than to restrain him. With her eyes fixed on Will, she stated, "This isn't about fists. It's about being truthful. It's over, you told me." "All right." Will's voice faltered. "But don't stand here acting like the page turned clean when the ink is still wet." "I didn't say it was clean. I said it was finished." Dylan said softly, almost to herself. "There's a difference." Will gently grabbed her wrist and said, "I should go." "You don't have to." Elektra observed the gesture with a mix of anguish and rage. She doesn't, of course. For what seemed like minutes, the 4 of them were trapped in that electrified circle. She's already decided she's staying. The sea continued to roll in, unconcerned. The sun kept moving slowly downward. However, nothing felt resolved between Will and Elektra, between Dylan and the past she had entered. RJ broke the stillness at last. "We're heading out. This place is suddenly too crowded," Elektra said, maintaining eye contact with Will for a while longer as though she was memorizing the new space between them. Then, with her shoulders straight and her pride unwavering despite her broken heart, she turned and left with RJ. Will let out a slow breath. Beside him, Dylan remained silent, the previous ease now gone. "I apologize," she said. He shook his head, saying, "I didn't mean to make it worse." "You didn't. This was going to be messy from the start." They lingered at the bar for a little longer, but the conversation never regained its previous lightheartedness. "I just hoped it wouldn't happen quite like this." The catastrophic encounter had done what such incidents always do. It had exposed everyone's raw edges and taken away the cautious distance they had been feigning to keep. As nightfall descended upon the city, Ridge eventually got up from his chair back at Forrester Creations. The younger generation had simply added another level of complexity to an already precarious web, and he had one more piece of knowledge than he desired. He strolled back to the window and watched as the lights of Los Angeles started to sparkle. Seldom did shocking news come by itself. It brought companionship. Nothing in this family remained private for very long, and every secret had a price that someone would eventually have to pay. This was evident from both the private admissions and the public altercations that took place tonight. The interwoven stories of the most renowned families in Los Angeles reached a new level of intensity in the sun-drenched hallways of Forrester Creations and the throbbing excitement of Bikini on a late summer afternoon. Characters were forced to face realities they had carefully avoided as what had started as private conflicts over loyalty, trust, and desire spilled into the public eye. Two parallel confrontations dominated the day's events, One was private and intimate between Daphne Rose and Ridge Forrester, while the other was heated and public between four young people whose romantic pasts refused to remain hidden. Daphne arrived at the Forrester estate with a burden that was getting heavier by the minute. Her marriage to Carter Walton had been put to the test in recent days in ways that neither of them had anticipated when they exchanged vows. Their life together had been shattered by her medical diagnosis and the realization that she might never be able to bring a child to term. She had given back her wedding rings and spoken about moving away from Los Angeles entirely in a moment of utter despair. Devastated, Carter had reaffirmed his devotion, and a tenuous understanding had been struck between them. Nevertheless, Daphne continued to feel the pain of what she was unable to provide for him. She needed someone who was not in the close vicinity of their suffering, someone who was familiar with the Forrester world and its pressures. Ridge had previously been that somebody. He had seen the early stages of their relationship and the hope that once characterized it as Carter's closest friend and confidant. Daphne did not anticipate simple solutions when she pursued him. All she had to do was express the anxieties that were still bothering her. She told him how she had been on the verge of ending everything, how the diagnosis had left her feeling unfulfilled in the eyes of a man who desired a family, and how the renewed vows had given them more time than assurance. With the steady seriousness that had characterized his presence for decades, Ridge listened. He was aware of Carter's genuine affection. He was also aware that emotional upheavals seldom remained contained within a single marriage. The second storm-gathering factor was something Ridge did not yet completely understand. Just a few days prior, Carter and Steffi Forrester had been by themselves in a vulnerable moment. Both felt that their own marriages were failing, with Carter facing the prospect of losing Daphne and Steffi reeling from Finn's inability to alert her about Sheila's presence in Monaco. They had turned to one another for solace in that tense environment, an experience they both later called a grave error. Carter had insisted on keeping the truth hidden. Steffi harbored the same secret, still unsure if she could ever trust Finn completely. Ridge stood listening to Daphne talk about her own marriage crisis, already enraged with his son-in-law over the Monaco scam. If he chose to put the pieces together, they were there. Two individuals in a state of emotional turmoil, both related to him by blood and allegiance, and both looking for comfort in the same surprising location. It was unclear if Ridge would make the connection, but the exchange sowed the seeds of skepticism that would later uncover several well-crafted lies. A different kind of collision was taking place across the city at the beachside pub that had long been used as a venue for younger Forrester and Spencer tragedies. Bikini hummed with its typical blend of sunlight, music, and the low murmur of discussions that were rarely long-lasting. Will and Dylan showed up together, their increasing intimacy no longer completely concealed. Dylan was a solid presence and a listening ear for Will Spencer, who was still raw from the breakup with Electra Forrester. Dylan, on the other hand, had not concealed her emotions. She had told Electra straight out that she had never intended to fall in love with Will. It had just occurred, and she was powerless to change the reality of it. The pressure was only increased by Katie Logan's open mistrust of Dylan's intentions. Will saw someone who provided him with the solace he needed following a string of both public and private setbacks, while Katie saw a young woman surrounding her son's wealth and reputation. As soon as R.J. Forrester and Electra entered the bar, their tranquil time came to an end. The four have a recent and complex past. Electra had already caused Will and R.J. to exchange blows. At Forrester Creations, Dylan and Electra had a verbal altercation that got worse until Eric Forrester himself stepped in to keep things under control. Dylan was accused by Electra of taking advantage of their friendship to gain access to the Spencer family. Dylan had maintained that her emotions were sincere. Even when the two women moved apart, Electra's last words, that she would always love Will, lingered in the air. The four of them now shared a tiny piece of beachfront property, and the tension between them was intense enough to change the mood at each nearby table. The first salutations were brief and courteous by the narrowest of margins. With his prior proposal to Zend for a new youth line still vivid in his mind and his interest in Electra no longer solely professional, RJ stood protectively close to Electra. Electra had a stiff stance. Even though she had broken up with Will during the altercation, which included his unintentional hit to Eric's face, seeing him with Dylan was obviously painful. In an effort to prevent the situation from getting worse, Will tried to be impartial. Dylan remained beside him, and as soon as Elektra's eyes met hers, she became more guarded. A sequence of sharp silences and incomplete phrases that held more weight than louder voices replaced the open argument that ensued. Though she might no longer claim Will, Elektra made it clear, without being overt, that she did not want to see someone else claim him with ease. Dylan didn't back down. She had already endured Elektra's threats at work and Katie's doubts, and she wasn't ready to give up the tenuous bond she had formed with Will just because the past wouldn't go away. With the caution of someone who had previously delivered a blow in this specific conflict and was considering if another might be needed, RJ observed the conversation. Will stood between the conflicting demands for his attention, the consolation Dylan provided colliding with the unresolved love for Elektra and the lingering guilt over Eric. The encounter was devastating not so much because of a single yelled charge as it was because it made every suppressed emotion visible. Will and Elektra's relationship had previously unfolded in public at Bikini. The fragments of that connection now faced their replacement on this stage. Nearby patrons noticed the change and moved farther away from the group. The four young people lived inside a private storm that the rest of the pub could feel, if not completely hear, as the music continued and the waves continued their regular rhythm beyond the railing.